Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Bolling. Welcome to the first 5 of 45 this unforgettable day in American history. President Donald John Trump sworn into office at high noon Eastern Time. A 7-year-old businessman who defied all odds and predictions is now the 45th president of these United States of America. Now the traditions continue. A parade down Pennsylvania Avenue from the Capitol to the White House. The first family got out of the beast several times along the route, and the parade started a little before 4 p.m. and Mr. Trump and the First Lady just arriving outside their new home, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. We're going to get to some of the highlights of the day in a moment, but first, reaction to the day. Now, Dana, you've been here all morning. Can we hold off on your initial reaction? Bob Beckel, got to go to Bob. You watched the smooth transition of power. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's been a painful day in some ways, but it's also, let me tell you, I think you can't not look at this and realize that, you know, they always say the British do majesty well. This is very well done. I'll say this about Trump's speech. I heard the same speech over and over again, but it was a tough guy speech, and it was directed against the establishment. Now the question is, can the tough guy deliver? And that's a harder deal.
Greg, you think as Bob, when he was announced, you know, where they say, and now the next president, the 45th president, he's coming down there. He had that really stern face, that boss face.
It was like it was either he was thinking about getting back to work or like, I cannot believe this is happening. I couldn't tell. But you know what? You witnessed the death of soaring rhetoric. It was stark and it was plain. Where President Obama is like a pina colada, that was a shot of whiskey. And you know, it was oddly brave in the sense that it refused to be eloquent. It refused to be pretty. It refused to be flowery. It just was raw, to the point. You've heard it before, but he didn't care that you heard it before. And also the rule of thumb, everything's better when it's short. And
we knew you'd say that.
And like, you know, Obama's speech was like a Grateful Dead song with a 20-minute drum solo. You know, Trump is a Ramones song. He's Beat on the Brat. It's 2 minutes. It's a 2-minute blast, and you remember it. A lot of people said that it was dark and scary, but the left mastered the art of dark and scary. They told us how bad the world was 8 years ago and 4 years ago and needed hope and change. This is just the same thing, but in a different, the problems are different.
KG, about 16 minutes for that inaugural speech, and one of the lines that jumped out, he talked about transferring power from government, bringing it back to the people, and that seemed to be the theme of the speech.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of his supporters and followers that have been with him through this historic movement wanted to hear. They wanted to hear the president speak about the future, that they were not going to be left behind, talk about the forgotten men and women and saying, forgotten no more. We will lead you into prosperity, and stressing the theme of America first, to say we don't need to be ashamed to say that we want to put our nation first, to put jobs here on our ground, for families to be able to get ahead and have that opportunity and that optimism for the future. So I didn't see it as a dark message. I thought it was very consistent with what he has promised along the campaign trail.
Dana, I noticed, I don't know if this is poetic justice or what, it was cool, it was overcast. No rain had fallen until literally the first words that came out of his mouth. Rain started to fall. A lot of people, you know, after Reverend Graham said,
well, of course, that's a blessing.
Right.
I've always imagined, you know, that whole idea of, like, if you get pooped on by a bird, that's good luck. I used to imagine that actually happened to some king along the way, and that somebody said, oh, actually, that's good luck, sir. So that's what made it good.
Boy, I must get a lot of great luck.
I don't think that the rain put a damper on things. How about that? I think that it was a beautiful day. It was perfectly executed. I do think that having been here all day and had the privilege of sitting with all of our great colleagues from Fox News and talking to people all around town and looking at some of the reaction, that whatever you wanted to see in this speech, you saw. So we are a polarized nation. We've been talking about that for 2 years. So I think that we have to be mindful that there are people that are going to look at it and say, oh my gosh, that was the scariest thing. And he knew that, because he says at the end of his speech, do not fear. Do not be afraid. We are protected by our military. We are protected because I'm swearing an allegiance to you, and we are protected by God. The other thing that I thought was very interesting and very different was, well, two things. One, there's not a lot of conservatism here. He says we're going to get everybody off welfare and we're going to put them to work. To me, that sounded a lot like FDR, right? We're going to do these things, and I don't think that they would take offense to that. Now, can you make that pass in the budget? I don't know. The other thing that was extremely different is that he rarely used the word I. It was all about you. And I think that was done on purpose and to draw a stark contrast with his predecessor.
But, you know, the interesting thing about it was people talked about it being anti-establishment, and it certainly was. I mean, it was a popular speech. It was not a Democratic speech or a Republican speech. The question, though, is now, starting on Monday, he's going to have to start dealing with the establishment. He's going to have to start turning these things into policy, into legislation, and that's a lot tougher. And I wonder whether he set himself up for it.
Why is that tougher, Bob?
Why is it tougher?
Yeah.
At Capitol Hill here?
Yeah.
Because it's going to be, you're not going to get Republicans to give 100% of their votes to him on things like Obamacare. I mean, they're already backing down. He said he's got an idea about how he's going to do this and cut costs, but people are trying to do that for 50 years.
But, you know, that brings up an interesting point. At some point, I kept waiting for a Trump mask to come off and reveal Bernie Sanders because Trump attacked both parties. Yep. He attacked both parties. He had a dark assessment of wage loss, job loss, lost opportunities, and the detritus, the horror of Washington, the way it's bloated. This is all Sanders material. So the protesters and the people that are mad about Trump, they might have found about 40% of his speech amenable and appealing. But my favorite line out of this, which I think got lost, is when he said, when you open your heart to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice.
Perfect line.
And it was a
great line.
It was a distinction between identity and patriotism, how the Democrats under Obama used identity to unite people even though it divides. And what he's trying to say is, if you unite under a flag, you don't need identity. But the identity political hacks are not going to go for that.
Can we do this? Let's take a listen to it. Can you throw that out, producers? Here we go.
At the bedrock of our politics will be a total allegiance to the United States of America. And through our loyalty to our country, we will rediscover our loyalty to each other. When you open your heart to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice. The Bible tells us how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. We must speak our minds openly, debate our disagreements honestly, but always pursue solidarity. When America is united, America is totally unstoppable.
And KG, I
love
guess the takeaway is you can be patriotic, and that doesn't necessarily have to mean you're prejudiced.
Yeah, and I think it was the way he describes it and he put it forth, it really made a lot of sense when you think about it. And that, to me, was a unifying message, that we can stand together, we can be proud of our country. There is no room then, for prejudice. And hopefully people actually really listen to the words. I think his intention really is to try to bring this country together so that nobody feels like they were left behind. And he knows that he has a big job to do, and he seems very calm today, confident, on top of his mission and what he wanted to accomplish, and I think and ready to serve. That's how I felt when I watched it all this morning.